Hello, and welcome to Fresh Blood, a podcast about killing it after 40, where we prove that new blood does not necessarily equal young blood. Here to discuss what it takes to have continued success through life, I'll be your host, Jolie Downs. With over 20 years of executive recruiting experience, I've learned how much we can grow and be inspired by other people's stories. I'm excited to share that with you here on Fresh Blood. Today, we are speaking with Tracy Brinkmann. Tracy is the owner and creator of Dark Horse Schooling and the Dark Horse Entrepreneur podcast. He has experienced a lot in his life, from hitting rock bottom with drugs, divorce, bankruptcy, and the death of a daughter, to running the planning and marketing of some of corporate America's finest companies, to running his own marketing company and podcast. Tracy is looking to share all that he has learned and is still learning about starting, restarting, kickstarting, and stepping up your entrepreneurial game. I'm really excited to learn more. Tracy, thank you for joining us on Fresh Blood. Please, could you tell us a bit more about your journey to getting where you are today?
Oh my goodness. First off, thank you for having me aboard. I really enjoyed this opportunity. And I'll give you the cliff notes and we can dig in wherever you want to. I was lucky enough to be the son of a military veteran. My dad served 23 years in the Army. And as a result of that, we moved all over the United States and even spent about 6 years stationed over in Germany. And I say it's a good thing because I got to see a broader view of the world and a broader view of people, right? Different creeds, different colors, different religions, different types of people, the good, the bad, the ugly. And then my dad decided to retire and we moved into Southern California. So I went from probably a very structured, and it wasn't my dad wasn't super, but he was very organized, very structured. So I went from this structured life to probably one of the most liberal places on the planet, let alone the United States, as I was becoming a teenager.
What was that like?
Oh,
that's a big time too.
It was a big time. I rebelled a bit because I was upset. I was kind of mad because I had grown up in this understanding of the world was this way. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I dumped into this world where, wait a minute, it's way different. People thought differently, did different things. And I'm like, okay, I don't quite get this, right? There was no military base where my dad settled anywhere near where he settled at. So it wasn't like I was near a military base. So I had some of those folks. They were completely non-military folks. And it was a bit of a culture shock, which seems funny because I was still in, the United States. What's up with that?
But there is there's different cultures. So yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah.
It's funny there's a comedian that used to say people overseas speak like 7 different languages, which is easy because you drive for an hour and you're in another language. In the United States, they do speak different languages. They're just different dialects. And coming out of high school, I joined the military for 6 years, went back overseas, and then came back. And then after my bout with drugs, and I dig into that too, if you like, I go on my corporate journey, and that took me around the United States as well. And I really began to learn as a young adult that inside the United States, we have these different cultures, let alone inside a single city. Some cities are like the 5 boroughs of New York, all kinds of individual cultures inside of that. And yeah, it was and I went off on a wild tangent on you. Sorry about that.
No, it's really interesting though, especially really you think about the dynamic that we have in our current culture right now in the United States. So I find it interesting when you talk about growing up with a certain dynamic and way of thinking and then being dropped in a completely different way of thinking. How did you adapt to that? And did you learn anything from that process?
You know what? I think as I was growing up, one of the things I took to was being very adaptive, right? Especially when you go from the United States to another country. I was lucky enough in the fact that my heritage, my grandfather was German, actually, came over here to the United States from Germany. So I grew up speaking the language. So that eased that culture a bit for me. But when it came to that piece of it, I was always very assimilative. maybe a little bit too much, if that's even a word. So I started
Yeah, no, I
assimilating
know.
the culture around me. Okay, I've never surfed before, but I was a gymnast, so I knew a lot about balance and everything. I was very athletic in that sense. So first thing I started to do is learn how to surf. That helped me assimilate right into kind of Southern California
Mm,
teenage boy culture. And then
totally, yes.
I leaned heavily in my youth and in all the moving that we did in humor, in being able to connect with people. Because I found
Mm,
in across any culture, if I come over and if I can make you smile and make you laugh, the barriers begin to come down. And then we can start
yes.
having open dialogue about anything we want to. And I think the third thing I really learned early was if I could get you to talk about you, keep asking questions about you, have an honest and authentic curiosity about what it is you do. Who's Jolie? What is she doing? Why is she doing this podcast? Why is she talking to this long-haired bearded guy? I don't know. And get you talking, that you'll open up and I'll learn things and I'll like, oh, you and I, we click. Or I'll figure out what you and I, we don't mesh very well. And I can go my separate way and find someone who does.
That's so great. And that's really great advice all around for helping people to connect with new people. Because let's be
Mm-hmm.
honest, it's not as easy as we get older. When we're
Mm-hmm.
in school, we have a lot of opportunities, and the older we get, it seems like there's less opportunity to meet new people. And that skill set can get a little dried up for some people.
Yeah, depending on your career choice, you're absolutely right. And of course, like you mentioned earlier, the events that have happened in the past year and a half have made that even more difficult. But at the
Yeah.
same time, they've almost made them a lot easier because a lot more people now are going to technological meetings like we're doing right here. We're meeting
Mhm.
together. I'm not even sure where you're at. I'm up in Wisconsin. You're
I'm in
wherever
Santa
you're
Cruz.
at.
Mhm.
There we go. And we're having a chit chat right now from across the miles. So there's those opportunities, but I think the opportunities are there. But as we get older, I think we fall into our routines. We're like
Mhm.
a record that a groove has been cut into, and we're just following our own song. I would warn you though, be careful, because a grave is nothing but nothing but the gutter with the ends kicked out, which could be that groove. So that grave could be that
Mhm.
groove. You want to be careful there.
Yeah, you want to be careful. You got to keep living, that's for sure.
There it
Now,
is.
I'm curious because we've only scratched the surface here. I know that you had a corporate role
Hmm.
in planning and inventory plan, production, all of that kind of thing, correct? For
Hmm.
a number of years before going into your own business.
Right.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about that with your corporate career. Where did you get to in your corporate career? And then what made you make the decision to go into business for yourself?
You know what? I always had my side hustles, right?
Mhm.
We're talking way back from the entrepreneur or the elementary days to where I was selling pencils. You go into the school and there's that little machine there, put a quarter in, you get two, three, four pencils. And I would always make sure I have extra pencils. So when someone needed one, I charge them a quarter for so I'd be getting 300% return on my investment. Later on, as
That's
I
brilliant. Yeah.
grew older, settling in Southern California, like I mentioned, I got into cars. I wasn't the engine guy. My brother from another mother, he was the engine guy. I was the paint and the stereo
Mhm.
guy. So a lot of my friends brought their cars to me to
Mm.
install stereos. That was good for extra money. Started painting cars. So I always had
Great money.
that
Yeah.
entrepreneurial hustle, even while I was working in fast food as a teenager. Okay.
Mm,
Now, when
smart.
like I mentioned earlier, high school, I jumped into the service for 6 years, came back to Southern California and started really my entrepreneurial journey first. I started doing
Okay.
computer consulting for preferred provider organizations, the people you would call up and say, hey, here's my insurance policy number. What doctors do I get to go to? So this is back in the 90s
Uh-huh.
now. All right. So I'm dating myself a little bit
Yeah.
here, but it's obvious with the
Yeah.
gray hair. And so I started doing database programming for them. So that was my first entrepreneurial journey, official. However, that coincided with the first real money I had in my pocket. Landed a couple of big
Mm,
clients. It was out celebrating, and that's where I was
isn't that
introduced
exciting?
to. That's where the drugs came into the scene. So you mentioned in
Mm,
the
hmm.
introduction my fight with drugs, and that one took me off my entrepreneurial path, unfortunately, down the road for a couple of years, battling with that addiction. Get out of
Hmm.
that. And that's when I got cleaned up and started my corporate journey. I started with
Okay.
Coca-Cola.
Okay, great.
Had an amazing run with
Amazing company.
Coca-Cola. Went through, I actually was a member of their North America marketing team, made it
Great.
up to a director level at their location down in Atlanta. Went from Coca-Cola to Home Depot. From Home Depot, I went to, let's see, it was a place, it's called Frontgate. They're now owned
Hmm.
by Home Shopping
Heard of
Network,
them. Hmm.
cataloger. From there, I went, and these are names you're all going to recognize except for
Yeah.
maybe Frontgate, David's Bridal,
Hmm.
Victoria's
Hmm.
Secret and La Senza. So all the other,
A lot of great companies.
yeah, some
Hmm.
amazing companies. And I think what I'm thankful for is there's something I learned different in each one of those. Obviously,
Hmm.
Coca-Cola is a marketing engine. Right. It was all about the
Yeah.
marketing, at least in my roles. So you learned all about those nuances that we hear people touting about. Know your customer, right? In doing
Hmm.
that. And then when you get to a Home Depot, they had this endless aisle mentality for their website. It's okay, you want a screw? Here it is, 50,000 versions. Which one do you need? And so there's a
Hmm.
pro and a con to that. And I got to see both sides. And then working closely with the marketing department there, they were doing great things on responsive targeting and retargeting before Facebook was even around or anything
Mm.
official.
Hmm.
They had some great techniques that they were using. So I learned a lot of that early on. And while this is all going on, I'm over here on the side. I'm doing coaching. I got in.
Mm.
I was being coached during my time at Coca-Cola, so I started in turn coaching others. Being a mentor inside the company, and then other people outside saying, "Man, you're doing some amazing things. Having an amazing career." There was one point in my career I had 5 promotions in 3 years, and they're like, "How did
Fantastic.
you do
Yeah. How
that?"
did you do
Right?
that? Tell us. How
Yeah,
did
I
you?
started. So I always had a side hustle, even during my corporate time. And then about 7 years ago, I moved up here to Wisconsin to run the marketing for an organization called Legendary Whitetails, and had a blast. Great time doing amazing things. And it was just like, all right, I want to keep doing this kind of solo.
Hmm.
There's
You found your jam.
I found my jam. It's fun.
Yeah.
I always found in the corporate world, I was good for a little while. And then there was that point where it just wasn't, I don't want to say it wasn't fun, but I got that itch,
The
right?
itch. Yeah. I
Yeah,
know
you
what you
get
mean.
that itch.
Hmm.
You're like, okay. And as you could tell by some of the names, I kept jumping from name to name,
Hmm.
trying to find that sweet spot. I find it more in my own world, saying, okay,
Yeah.
here's what I get to do, because you get to pick who you work with. And
You're,
that's one of the, I think, amazing things about being an entrepreneur is two parts. One, you get to be you. And
hmm.
if you're really not doing your business or your customers a service. You've
Yes.
got to be authentically you. Now,
Yes.
I'm not saying you need to tell them all your dirty secrets, you know what I'm saying? But you want to be you. And
Yeah.
I come to you, here I am. I got my old surfer shirt on, my long hair and my beard. That's just who I am. All
Yes.
right.
I love
And
it.
what you'll find is when you be you, those that resonate with you, they'll be attracted to you. You'll
Yes.
spend
You're
less
so
time
right.
trying to find them because they'll
Hmm.
be drawn to you. You're like, oh man, Tracy rocks. I love everything about him. And those
Hmm.
that can't dig you for who you are, you probably don't want to work with them in the first place.
100%. You're 100%. Tracy, there's so much to unpack there. I'm like, I don't know where to start. Okay. So let's start with the corporate really quick because
Sure.
you mentioned the promotions, and this is something that people want to know about. There's a lot of people who are trying to move themselves up the corporate ladder.
Mhm.
They're trying to get into big name companies that are like their dream companies. So I have two questions. First, what helped you get into these companies, would you say? Like, what helped you land some of these jobs, if you have any advice there? And then the
Sure.
second, when you had the promotions, multiple promotions within a company, I'd like to know what you felt helped you be that person that they look to for the promotion.
Sure. The first one is I became the person they wanted me to be. All right. So let's go with
Mm-hmm.
the Coca-Cola example. Did I want to go into Coca-Cola at the manager level? Heck yeah. That wasn't my tactic. I went in and said, you know what? Here's an amazing job that I can see an uprising trajectory, and it was working in their parts department. Basically, if you look around, you see all those Coca-Cola machines, and I don't mean the vending machines, the fountain machines where you go get your drink and go away. There are vans that go around and service those machines. Well, they were looking for someone to make sure that the inventory is in place in all those vans across the whole Western United States, which was about, if I remember correctly, 125 vans or so. I'm like, oh, I can do that, because my geek brain said, if they don't have the right tools, I could create the right tools. So I went in there with the confidence. I went in there, I got the suit, the tie, no beard. I left my mustache, cut my hair short. I became the person they want. In there speaking their language. You do a little research. The easiest research is really just read their websites. When you're looking at the job description, there'll be keywords. Go and look at other job descriptions that they're looking for. You'll see those keywords will be sprinkled throughout all those job descriptions, those buzzwords, all right? Different cultures have different buzzwords. And if you can inject them in the interview, they're like, oh, this is our guy. We don't even need to look any further. And again, it's because that's who I wanted to be. I'm like, okay, this is who they need. I'm going to become that person. And then when you get in there, you go in 180%, not 100%. You just go after it. You be the go-to guy, even while you're learning. That's okay. So that's that one. And what was the other question now? I'm sorry.
And cheers to that. Cheers to that. So the second one was how did you get, so that was how you got the job, right?
That's how I got the promotions.
The promotions. Yeah.
The promotions were a result of continuing that 180%. And here's where I'll go with. So the role I was at in Coca-Cola North America marketing, I was the manager of inventory and planning for all of their marketing materials. And so rather than just saying, okay, I just have to worry about making sure the right inventory is in the right place at the right time, I went beyond that and said, I went over to the folks that were creating the actual marketing content and said, here's what I'm seeing from the sales, and shared that with them, and then gained their insights of what they were creating. And so it became almost this two-way street of, hey, here's what we're thinking about doing. And I could say, you probably don't want to do that, because the last 7 times you tried that. And it really became important, because the mentality back then was there was a lot of turnover in the marketing department as folks came in young from college, trying to build up their portfolio, and we either move on to other parts of the Coca-Cola organization or out into other organizations entirely. So they weren't always the same people. And so I became that almost that constant. And then I did the same thing with the customer service folks. I reached out to them and say, hey, here's what I keep seeing going on. I think it'd be helpful. X, Y, Z. Because I was adding all this value across the board, they're like, oh, you need more responsibility. And it happened. Boom. At one point, my VP created a role that actually fit what I was already doing. They're like, you're doing all these amazing things. Let's just create that role because it's serving us so well. Boom, there's that. And then I continued to do that, and they put me into a manager role, and then it became a director role. So it was just, again, I don't want to be oversimplistic, but deliver the value, just like you tell any entrepreneur out there. If you bring the value, the rewards come. And sometimes you have to step out of the norm to find that value.
You're so right. Thank you for that. It was a great answer. And so the other part that we skipped over was the drugs, when you went down that avenue. And you got yourself out. And that's what I want to hear about, because there's a lot of people that are struggling. There's a lot of people struggling with addiction. How did you help yourself?
I would like to say I looked around and one day and said, oh my God, I need to stop doing this. It wasn't that simple.
No,
I had to hit rock bottom. And I've had this conversation with a number of folks who've battled an addiction of one type or another. I unfortunately was too damn good at it. Trust me, I'm not trying to make this life sound awesome, because it's not. It's somewhat like you see in the movies, but it's not like the movies. Like I said, I had landed a couple of great clients, was out celebrating, and I was actually sharing with a fellow who owned the bar that we were shooting some pool at. And man, I got this great client, and I really compressed the timeline of the turnaround just to land the job. And he's like, sounds like you need to stay up a little bit longer. I'm like, yeah, but man, your brain only works so long. You're programming. I need to sleep. I need to eat. He says, I can fix that. And that was the introduction to meth. He gave me some of that. And I got so much programming done the next 3 days after that. I was like, man, this stuff is awesome. And it's all great. Anything like that. Booze, that initial buzz feels amazing until you wrap your car around a pole. And so it quickly got its hooks into me, and my business became secondary. It was all party, fun, very selfish. And because of my ability to connect with people, I didn't have to go out and sell it. I actually got other people to sell it for me to support then I found damn, I could actually make some money doing this. And so now it became a profit center to the point where I was able to buy my own condo. I had a couple of cars and right. I wasn't like living the lifestyle or anything. I just had a nice little condo, a little space of my own. And there are a number of seedy characters in this world, and they're even seedier when you get to the dark side of the tracks. And it came to a point I was off on a 4-day party binge, and someone ratted me out, and the police literally kicked open the door and raided my condo. Wow. I was not there when it happened. So that was a blessing from above. I got back there that Sunday morning, and I walked into my condo, and you're like, what the hell happened here? And it's in the movies. Furniture's tossed over. There were Fruity Pebbles and Frosted Flakes and instant potatoes dumped out on the floor as they were looking for things. They didn't find anything. Like I said, a little smart. But a couple of detectives showed up while I was cleaning up. And are you Tracy Brinkmann? Yes, I am. Now, mind you, remember I said I was on a 4-day party binge. The beginning of those 4 days, me and a buddy of mine went to the firing range. This is in Southern California. I didn't have a carry permit. I didn't have a gun permit or anything. So we were allowed to have it at the range. And I said, hey, I'd like to come back tomorrow. And it were his guns. He had the permits. I'd like to come back tomorrow and shoot some more at the range. And he goes, I'm not sure I'll be able to make it. I said, can I just borrow your guns and I'll just drop them by your house later on? Sure, no problem. They're in my briefcase with my wallet. I'm out on the party binge, having my fun. I get to the house. So we're back to the present, right? The detectives come in. Hi, Tracy Brinkmann. Yes. We heard this or that. And that's why what was they call it? Executing a warrant. Do you have some ID? Sure. It's in my briefcase. Let me get everybody gasp at this moment. I wasn't thinking. I was just trying to be the good guy. Here's my ID. Wasn't even thinking back to Thursday and what was in my brief. Click, open. From behind, I hear one officer yell, gun, right? Wraps his arms around me, pins me down, handcuffs me. And I don't blame him. If I was the officers and the roles were reversed, I'd have done the same thing. They take me downtown. I hang around for a bit in a cell. And then they finally pull me into an interrogation room. And they're asking all the right questions. They knew all the right names. Now, I didn't admit they knew all the right names. Right? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know that guy. Yeah, I may have seen him at the bar, but if you show me a picture, I probably wouldn't know his name. Those types of things. So they finally let me go. And as I'm walking back home, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, my dad had always raised me family first. And I had a 4-month-old daughter. So now it's not my life I'm hosing up anymore. I was this close to, if I'd have been home, it may have been a different story, and I might not be talking to you right now. So that was I use the phrase, that was my come Jesus moment. And I got back to the condo, called my mom and dad and said, and God loved them. I had amazing parents, God rest them. And my brother from another mother, if it hadn't been for those 3 folks, I might not be here. So for anybody who's battling any kind of addiction and you're ready, because if you're not ready, you're probably not listening to me. You checked out from my story a long time ago. But if you are ready, seek the help, man. Find somebody you trust. Heck, find someone you don't trust, you don't even know, that you think might help you, and get the help. I didn't go to a rehab. I went to my mom and dad's garage and set up a bed because of my daughter. I gave her my old room where I used to live and took my bed and put it in the garage. You can do that in Southern California. Set that up and literally fell asleep for 5 days. I only woke up enough to do bio things, go to the bathroom. Mom would force a sandwich down my gullet and I'd go back to sleep again. And then once I was awake, after that 5 or 6 days, I mentally, I had taken this wicked kick to the head psychologically. I was like, wow, I still had all these amazing computer skills. I could have went right back out there and started making money. But I kept thinking, man, what if I see this person, I go into an interview to, pitch my service, and they're like, didn't I see you wired out of your skull at the bar the other day? You know what I'm saying? That kind of
Yeah.
thing kept me from doing that. So I went out and did warehouse jobs. I worked at the overnight dock, moving boxes, the midnight shift. I went out and did Kelly services, being an accountant in someone's office for a while, just to build my confidence back, to feel good about myself, just one step at a time, as they say. And then finally I was like, okay, I'm ready. And that's when I put myself back out on the market and landed that role at the Coca-Cola Company.
Amazing. Really good. I applaud you, Tracy, because that's so hard, especially in that moment, calling your parents and saying, I need help. What a big moment. I thank you for sharing that, because I know how I can imagine how hard that is. And I know we all have those moments in life that are so hard, and we just need to bring ourselves to take that step. And so good for you.
Don't get me wrong. I'm going to tell anybody out there, I'm not saying it's easy.
Oh no,
because it's not.
That's why it's not.
If it was easy, everybody would do it.
So hard. It's so hard.
Here's the thing: the hardest. Everything I had envisioned in my head as I was walking home, knowing I was going to make that call, all the horrible things I had thought did not happen. The worst case scenarios that I had rung through in my mind 87 times, just dialing the phone, they didn't happen. It was just me having to utter the words and my mom saying, sure. You're like, wait, what? You've got to get over the fear that's inside yourself, because so many people are willing to help you without even berating you. Sure, come on over. We'll make sure you're taken care of.
There are so many incredible people in this world. They're everywhere. They're all around us. We just need to open our eyes and hold out our hand and be willing to put it in someone else's.
But it's that pride, right?
There's that pride gets in the way always. In fact, that was a big thing learning early on in relationships. If you want to have good relationships, you have to learn how to put the pride away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you've done a lot in your life, Tracy. What do you feel, out of all the things that you've done, what do you feel has been one or two of your greatest successes, and what did you learn from it?
I think it's going to be one of the hidden successes. One of the greatest successes really was the moment I turned around and looked back into my own abyss. And I've had to do it 3 times, obviously coming out of my drug times. I took the time, and I didn't do it right away. Don't get me wrong. I was going through that building myself back up. But during that building myself back up, I took the tough man in the mirror moment and looked back and said, okay, I went through some crap. I did some stupid things. What can I learn from it? And took those lessons forward, which is why I became a success in my corporate journey. And then during my corporate journey, you mentioned the death of my daughter. I went through that trial. And after that, I threw myself into working into personal development. And as a part of that exercise, I thought, let's do this again. Looked back at that horrible moment I wouldn't wish on anybody of losing a child to say, okay, what can I learn? What can I glean from this to carry forward? Yeah. And then the last time was when I came to realize that I was selling myself short in the relationship that I was in, because I had thrown myself into personal development and she was in her own path. Let's say she was just staying stagnant while I was, I won't even use the phrase growing. I was going 10 degrees one way and she was going 0 degrees straight. Well, 10 degrees over 10 years, that's a long way apart. And it became to the point where I actually felt it was an abusive relationship, not physically, but definitely mentally. And you've got to stand up. I had the courage to say, you know what? This is not working. I'm worthy of someone or something better. And when you can get through the ugly divorce. And so really, I think those are I've raised some amazing kids. I got 3 wonderful daughters, which that will always be my greatest success. But when it comes to the inside, myself, it's being able to turn around and look at that monster that was me at one point. I call it the abyss, and l- glean the
Yeah.
lessons, right? That silver lining, or
Yes.
whatever cliche you want to give it.
hmm I love this so much, Tracy. It's so important. And that's where so much of our growth happens, is really being able to look back into those moments of abyss. And we all have them,
Hmm.
more than one generally, and be able to learn from those times in our lives. And often those times really they give us the soil, if you will, for that learning. At least for me, I've found that those abyss moments where it feels like everything is over. It is a darkness, if you will.
Hmm.
When you can get yourself out
I
of
think,
that and you can look back, it's those tools that help you get through everything else in life.
amen. There it is.
There's so much to learn there.
I think if anyone wants to believe that they're here for a purpose, let's scratch that for a moment. I think life has lessons to teach you.
hmm
And as you continue to go through life, I'm 50 plus years old. I'm still learning lessons. And
Yeah.
until I learn the lesson, life is going to find a way to put the lesson back in front of me. So as soon as I'm ready to learn the lesson, it'll say, I'm going to start teaching you the next lesson. Now you've
Yes.
learned that one. And I'll be experiencing new things. Once I figured, you know what, I'm worthy of something amazing. 6 months later, I found the amazing woman and married her, and we're happy as a clam now. But
That's
I
wonderful.
had to
Yeah.
learn that lesson first. So life will keep teaching you will keep putting the lesson in front of you until you learn it.
Yeah. Yes. And Tracy, I want to say I'm so very sorry about your daughter. I can't even imagine. I don't even know what to say about something so horrendous. Is there anything that from that experience, that, that abyss of learning, that moving forward, here's where I'm going with this. There's a
Sure.
lot of people in grief right now. There's a
Hmm.
lot of people who've been lost over the past year, not only for COVID, for lots of different reasons. Is there anything that helped you through that grief that you feel might help somebody else?
Oh, I was lucky enough, and it seems weird to say, to be there at the moment that she passed. And actually, it was a choice, right? She was born with a distended abdomen and had 6 operations in her first 3 months of life. And she was put on the donor. I'm going to give you the short version. She was put on the organ donors list. We were in Atlanta. She ends up needing to move to the Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh because that's where the operation is. It was a newer operation. So they were going to do it up there. So now we're flying back and forth and everything. And at one point, one of the, I don't know what they call them nowadays, they used to call them candy stripers. One of the aides, the
Mhm.
hospital aides, was
I did
holding the
that.
baby. And baby's a wiggly jiggly. Something happened, got her attention. She falls out of control, hits her head, gets a massive hematoma, a big old banana shape on her head. And her health begins just to go sliding downhill. And so on one of the trips going up there, and she's about 17 months old at this point, and any parent will recognize this, you see your child and something's wrong just instantly, just like that. So I walked into her room and I'm like, okay, there's something going on. So I pulled the doctor aside in the room and asked, hey, I'm curious, if the organs are available right now, would she survive the operation? I got a lot of doctors speak, him and Han, and literally, no joke, grabbed him by his white coat, pulled him across the hall into a janitor's closet, closed the door, said, look, it's just you and me. No hospital administrators, no insurance companies. Re-asked the question. And finally got a no, he didn't believe she would survive the operation. Okay, not the answer, but now I know.
Mhm.
So do you think her health would improve like it was just a month ago where she could survive the operation? Little quicker answer, but at the end it was no, I don't think so. And at this point, she's on a respirator.
Mhm.
Her body is functioning okay, but she's too weak to breathe. So it becomes okay, she's not going to survive the operation if it happened right now, and she's not going to get better to survive the operation. So you're left with that ugly choice. Do you leave her on the machine or do you let her go?
Mhm.
And this is where, sorry, this is where I
No.
was almost thankful for my previous drug addiction and looking back into that abyss, because I realized my whole bout with drugs was my selfish time. It was all about me, party, party, right? That's all
Mhm.
I cared about, me. And when I realized I was being selfish because I had my other daughter, I stepped out of that. And so it actually made me really pause to think, am I keeping her here in the hopes that she will get better and grow up? Or am I keeping her here for me?
Mm-hmm.
And it made the decision just the slightest bit easier to remove the breathing apparatus, wrap her up in her favorite blanket, and literally rock her to sleep one last time. Sorry.
Oh, don't
And now
apologize.
I'm going to get to the answer to your question, because I got to be there at that moment and almost became the deciding factor. But I got to tell her thank you for all the amazing things that she had taught me. She had this amazing thing she did. Anyone who's seen E.T., where E.T. reaches out and his finger glows and he heals Elliot, she would do that anytime she saw something new in her come into her life, toy, food. She would reach out real tentatively and touch it. And once she touched it, like any other baby, it's in her mouth, it's all over, whatever. And she always looked at the world with these eyes of amazement, like any baby does. But because what she was going through, I knew she was uncomfortable and in pain because of all the things that were going on with her, but she was still just, I was always looking around at her, watching her watch the world, and thought, oh my God, I need to continue to do this. So I promised her while I was rocking her that I was going to do these things going forward. And I've kept that promise so far. And so to answer your original question about helping them deal with the pain is like, whoever you've lost, they came into your life for, I truly believe, for some reason. If it was to help you to get through something, to teach you something, to be there as a shoulder to lean on. My brother from another mother, Robbie, had passed away. He's 4 years my junior. He passed away 5 years ago. I was deeply in pain until I realized he taught me everything he could teach me. I wanted to learn so much more from him. So that was my way of looking at, okay, he's still with me. He'll never be away. So that's probably, and it's not a great lesson. It's not going to ease anybody's, and then the second thing I would say is feel it, man. They're your feelings. You have every right to your feelings. I held mine in when my daughter passed away for far too long. And I didn't realize it until about maybe 8 to 12 months later. I was watching this movie where a father volunteered to kill himself to give his son his organs. And there was I won't explain the whole thing. It'll take too long. But as soon as I realized that's what that father was doing, he was going to off himself to donate his organs to his son who was dying. I just started bawling like a baby. All these pent up emotions had just come out from my experience that I didn't let myself feel. The movie just said, here, it's your time. Boom. Like life showed me that lesson, and I finally learned it. So you've got to feel your feelings, and then you can say, what were they here? Again, it's another way of looking at that silver lining. Yeah, it's not great that they died. Your mom passes away, your brother passes away, but man, you got to enjoy them for how long, right? Mine was only 18 months, but man, 18 amazing months.
God, Tracy, that was incredibly powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I'm really moved right now, and there's so much to take away from there. I'd like to know, what was your daughter's name?
Her name was Krista with a K.
Krista with a K. Thank you for sharing Krista's story with us. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
So I'm curious, because you've learned a lot in your life. And so I'd like to know what your personal definition of success is. How do you define that for yourself?
Believe it or not, I've made it so simple, is being authentically myself. If I get to be authentically myself, I feel successful. So that means to be able to feel successful in my marriage, I get to be me, and she gets to be she. And if there ever a time where those things, then we figure it out. Nobody's perfect. We've had our bumps, but we've never gotten to the point where we are yelling at each other, which is amazing.
That is amazing.
I don't like that kind of confrontation. I would like to sit down and have a chat with you and just figure it out. Hey, this is what I'm thinking. What are you thinking? Right? What is your opinion? Which is so hard, especially given the things we've seen like we talked about earlier, what's going on in the world right now. Everything is, you got to do this or don't, right? Or you got to wear that, or you can't do that. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, it's not always black or white. Sometimes you got to drop the ego, drop the pride, and just share.
Oh,
And
so true.
right?
Yes.
So yeah, if I can be authentically me, I'm a success. That makes it
Yeah,
pretty easy.
you're right. And when you are, it's just like when you're able to embody those things, when you're able to be authentically you 100%, you give permission to everyone else to do exactly the same. And it
Thank
just
you.
opens it all up.
That's right. And
So,
I have no right to say, you know what? I don't like how long your hair is. I think you should be a blonde. Who gave me the right to say that? You're like, you know what? I like my damn hair.
mhm. Yes, exactly. It just makes me think the whole perception is reality, because it's this topic that you can go so many different ways with, because perception is reality. And when you're dealing with interviewing and things like that, just like you said, you changed yourself, you showed them what they're looking for.
Hmm.
You became the person that they wanted you to
Right.
be, because perception is reality for them. But then on the flip side, you also want to have you can't be defined by other people's perceptions of you. Like you said, someone can come and say, why don't you should have this long blonde hair. And you're like, oh, maybe that's the reality you should have. No, the reality is your own perception. So this perception is reality is one of those double-edged swords for me that can go back and forth.
Yeah.
It's just a matter
It's
of,
it's a tough one.
yeah.
Here's what I find is when people play that, when they do, like I said, from my Coca-Cola days where I became the person they wanted, as I look back now, of course, back then I didn't notice it. I compartmentalized pieces of my life, okay? Because I was still a hardcore rock and roller back then.
Yes.
And I
Mm-hmm.
even liked street rap. And this is the stuff that I wouldn't play in the office. You can't play that kind of stuff at the office. And there's words in there that, as a white man in the United States, some people will go, why are you listening to that? You can't even sing those words out loud. And so I had to compartmentalize. And then to take it one step further, I had to compartmentalize it away from my kids.
Oh, you have to. Yes. All of these. This is why
So
it's so
it's okay.
yeah.
I could not only could I not be me at work, but I really couldn't be me at home fully.
Mm-hmm.
So what? And it begins this really ugly process of the snake eating itself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's where I come back. If I can be authentically me, then rock on. Now it
Yes.
doesn't
Yes.
mean I'm going to be blurting curse words
No.
everywhere I go. I don't curse all the time, but sometimes an expletive will roll right out of there. I'm like, oops,
It happens.
sorry.
These things happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm curious, if you've experienced a lot, there's a lot of people who feel stuck in life
Mhm.
right now. It's in middle age too. I find that a lot of people will hit that spot in life where it just, they feel a little stuck. Do you have any advice that you would give someone to help them move forward and either find their right path, find their right next opportunity, or just move past that feeling of being stuck?
We could go on a whole nother episode for this, but I'll give you a nugget, and if we want to dig, we can. I have a whole, what I call the eye chart process, and the I probably answers your question, which is to ideate. Let me expand. And when I say this, I want everyone, if they wanted to pause for a moment, and if you're in a safe spot, you could even close your eyes and imagine yourself sitting on a vista up high on a mountain, right? Maybe on a cliff if you're willing to hang your feet down. And you're looking down over what you would call your perfect life. You're just looking down. And as you're looking down, ask yourself, what kind of house are you living in? Is it a mansion? Do you have a little bungalow, right? Or do you have a little grass thing along the beach? Whatever it may be. Maybe it's a cabin up in the mountains, right? Now, let's walk inside that house. What does it look like? Do you have fancy stuff all over the place? Do you have rustic? Do you have Kiss memorabilia like I have in my room behind me here? Who is the perfect person that greets you as you walk through that door? Are there kids? Is there a dog? How does it smell? Just take that big whiff. Now, how is all of this making you feel? So this is your mind telling you, this is what we really want deep inside. You notice I haven't talked about money or a job or who you are. This is what you're like, okay, if I could get to this, I would be a happy person. Now, that's going to be the first step to breaking you out of your rut. Remember I talked about that rut being a grave with the ends kicked out, that groove. And now it's like, okay, now you can maybe ask the question, all right, let's leave the house and go to the job. And maybe going to the job means you're just going to a different part of the house because you're working for yourself. Or if you're one of those cubicle folks or an office guy, that's fine. Where is that at? Yeah, Coca-Cola? Is it an IBM? Is it a shiny ivory tower? Or is it somewhere like Google where you got all these cool things happening, right? Maybe you're a gamer. I don't know. Whatever it is for you, you can picture that. Now you can step back and say, all right, that's what I want. Now I know what I want.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's start backstepping that a step at a time. How do I get there from where I am today? If you can't picture what you want, and here's the perfect example. After I went to that ugly divorce, about 2 months later, I was sitting down with my journal and I figured, all right, you know what? I know I'm going to be in a relationship eventually, but I really want it to be the right. And I started writing down what I wanted in my perfect mate, perfect woman. And being a guy, obviously I had to get through all the obvious things. I wanted to have long hair and pretty eyes and this, that, and the other. All right, now, but then you start going a little deeper. I wanted to have an open mind. I wanted to have a golden heart, to be loving, all these things down. For me, now I know what I was looking for. I didn't have to worry about the next time I saw some cutie walking down the hallway going, ooh, do I want to start dating her? Because if she didn't fit this model that I just pictured inside my own head, because I know what my heart wants, moving on. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, just a few months behind that, I found her. Mm-hmm. I think it's that whole law of attraction.
Yes.
You put it out there. The world, universe, man, this is what I'm looking for.
Yes.
And eventually it will be brought into your circle. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. You've still got to earn it, right? Because trust me, I had to earn this woman. But the universe says, okay, here's the one you're looking for. Boom. Now, the rest is up to you.
Tracy, that's exactly the steps that I took to get myself unstuck. So thank you for just reinforcing that, because
it's gold,
that's
right?
what worked for me. It is gold. It is gold. And it is a matter of, there's so much that people find themselves surrounded by things that they don't want. And it's very easy to do because life can be very reactive and we can forget to be proactive. And yes, when I was in my moment of stuck, that's what got me out, was that whole visualization of figuring out, what would my ideal life look like in 5 years? If I were to, everything were to go, if I were to plan every facet, what would that look like? And then finally figuring out what you want and going after it. So that's it. That's amazing.
That's it. And one step at a time.
Yeah. One step at a time. Yes.
And I think one subtext underneath that is, if you are looking at something, you're like, dude, I already know what I want, man. Thanks for that exercise, but I know what I want. There's a question you need to ask yourself. There's a couple of them, but I'll give you one. Mm-hmm. Is that really your goal?
Yes.
Because if you haven't done that exercise, it might not be your goal. Mm-hmm. It might be a goal you've stumbled into because of the career path you're on, or because of a choice of partners, or maybe even your parents. Who knows? It could be a goal that has been brought to you by society. 100%. Answer that question. And if you have to pause and think about it, it's probably not your goal. If you say 100%, no problem, then you're good. Go for it.
Yep. No, that's very profound. Thank you. So before we wrap up, just a couple little things. Mm-hmm. Is there a book or a video or a talk that you've watched, read, listened to that made a really big impact in your life that you think other people would benefit from as well?
Oh my gosh, there are two. And the first one is really easy to mention. Not many people will read it. I get it. It hit me when I was in my teen years, when all that thing was going on. My dad settled into Southern California. I was into martial arts, and I picked up a book called The Tao of Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee. And it wasn't just about his martial arts. It was a lot about, he was a very philosophical guy. This dude was deep. And I didn't realize it. I just knew him as the guy up on the big screen back then. And there was a number of notions, philosophies in there. And one that still rings true to me today is absorb what is useful, discard the rest, and add something that is uniquely like that. You do that, and the rest of your world will just fall into place. So that's number one. And I think the one that really was very pivotal for me after that was See You at the Top by Zig Ziglar. That happened right after my daughter passed away. And I didn't read the book. I actually bought the cassette tapes and listened to them over and over again. And there's just so many magical stories. And he just had this way of delivering them in such a authentic and down home and disarming way. You're learning a lesson. You're like, wait a minute, did I learn a lesson there? It's so cool. If you haven't listened to any of Zig's stuff, I'd recommend all of it. But that one, See You at the Top, is pretty magic.
I'm going to check that out. Thank you. So as
Mhm.
far as the guests getting to find you, I know your podcast. Tell us a little about your podcast.
The podcast is called The Dark Horse Entrepreneur. And like you mentioned, it's for my dark horses, which is another word for the underdog, right? Those folks
Mm-hmm.
that no one thinks is going to be able to show up, win, place, or show. If you're looking to start, restart, or kickstart your life, your business, that's where we're at, man. Because we talk a lot about entrepreneurship, but I find that there's a lot of lessons in life that we got this amazing tool between our ears.
Mm-hmm.
If our if our mindset is jacked, our biz set is going to get jacked as well. So we spend a
Yes.
lot of time on all that personal development stuff at the same time.
Great. I love it. Love it. So people can all have your links on the show notes so they can find your website. And if people are interested in your consulting, they can find you there as well.
Absolutely.
All right. And then last question, Tracy,
Mm-hmm.
what are you sure of in life?
Oh, what am I sure of? Mike, that's a magic question. What am I sure of? You know what? Here's one thing I'm sure of. I'm sure that things are going to change.
Ooh,
And as a
good
result
one.
of that, I'm going to have to change too. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to have to stop being, we talked about authentically me, but it may be how I present that to you might change until you can catch up with who I am. I don't know. But yeah, I
Yeah,
guarantee you, no matter
I
what's
like it.
going on in the world, something's going to change. And as a result, you're going to have to.
Yep.
And if you don't change, here's the magic. If you don't change while the rest of the world's changing, you, my friend, are falling behind.
100%. Tracy, thank you so much. This was a wonderful talk. I enjoyed it all.
Thank you.
There is so much wisdom to be learned from Tracy's story. From the very beginning, Tracy learned how to be adaptive. Moving around so much required him to learn how to connect with other people. This skill is so important to success in life, and Tracy gave great advice around how to develop that skill. Let's be honest, it can feel harder to develop meaningful connections during certain stages in life. But regardless of how it feels, there are a lot of options out there, both locally and online. And we have learned over the past couple of years that you can develop deep connections virtually. As Tracy shared in his own life, he learned how to surf in order to connect with the community he lived in. There is so much richness to be added to life when you find connection within your community. If you are looking for deeper connection, what is an activity that interests you that you can get involved in? There are communities around every interest. Pick one that lights you up and go all in. You will find those like-minded souls that make life brighter. Just this past week, it was a tough one on me. It was emotionally exhausting all around. I felt depleted. I knew I needed an insurgence of positive energy to counteract the negative feelings, so I spent the weekend immersed in one of my preferred interests and communities. By Monday, I felt rejuvenated. Finding these outlets is key to a thriving life. I know that even when immersed in the community, it can be hard to know how to connect with people. I thought Tracy gave great advice here. He would try to make people laugh and smile to help the barriers come down. Humor is a great way to connect with people, but even if humor is not your style, you can always make someone smile. Kindness, authentic curiosity, genuinely wanting to learn about someone is something that can be felt. It generates good feelings and it results in that smile. As it's been said, people don't always remember what you say, but they do remember how you made them feel. Everyone has an interesting story to tell. Be the person who is curious enough to learn about it, and you will find those connections growing and deepening. Tracy had great advice around landing that dream job and setting yourself up for promotion. When Tracy wanted to get that role at Coca-Cola, Tracy presented the company with exactly what they were looking for, going in with confidence that he could do the job to the best of his abilities. He spoke their language using the buzzwords found on the job descriptions, and he made the correlations with his own experience. Doing this landed him that job. Once he got the role, Tracy went in at 180% even while learning. Tracy advises that you be that go-to person. Become that person willing to help, willing to learn, willing to make a connection. Tracy would connect with every department using that curiosity to learn about their operations, their wants, their challenges, and becoming the person who can see the overall big picture. Tracy became that person who brought the value add. Because of his actions, the promotions came and he quickly moved up the ranks. This is a recipe for success that you can apply to your life. Are you going all in on what is important to you? Are you looking for new ways that you can help? Are you looking for ways that you can continue to learn? Are you finding ways to make helpful connections that assist others to reach their goals? Do this in your work. Do this in your life. The success will follow. I appreciated that Tracy shared the difficult parts of his story and what he learned from those experiences. He gave us some very powerful messages. When struggling, whether with addiction or something else, we must get over the fear inside of ourselves and ask for help. There really are so many people out there willing to give a helping hand. We all hope that that would be your family or your friends, but even if that isn't the case, our world is full of beautiful humans working at organizations that were created specifically to help you. Please, if you need it, go to these places and ask for that help. Tracy shared that he hit that rock bottom from his drug use, and he had to take a look into his own abyss. He had to acknowledge that he had done stupid things, but he took the time to learn from it. Then he moved forward and built himself back up stronger than before. This is possible for anyone. Regardless of where you are in life or what you've done, you can make a decision to make a change. And I am not saying that it's easy. All I am saying is that it is possible, and it is completely up to you. For Tracy, this experience of looking into his abyss, learning how to deal with his trauma, and learning how to come back from it, helped him deal with the ultimate loss of losing his child, his daughter, Krista. Once again, being faced with a different kind of abyss, Tracy knew which mindset would bury him and which mindset would help him get through. There was nothing Tracy could do to change the situation. So he turned to what is there to learn. What is there to learn? What can I take from this experience to carry forward? How is this going to help me be a better human? In times of great distress, it is the mastery of the mindset that will help us to get through. I remember the extreme anger and soul-crushing ache of losing my mother. She died from cancer at the age of 50, and I remember being so angry with the world. I had always believed in a higher power, and I remember that feeling of anger and disbelief. How could there be a higher power that would allow such a horrible thing to happen? To take such a good human, such a loving, wonderful, needed mother. Deep tragedy also brings into focus all the other deep tragedy around, and I quickly spiraled down, thinking, what kind of world is this? But with reflection, with a flip of the mindset, I realized I was asking the wrong question. I was focusing on the wrong thing. The right question was, how could I even question a higher power? How could I question this world when I had been given the experience of a wonderful mother that I loved so deeply? I had this enormous gift of unconditional love, something so beautiful that it felt like I had been broken when it was taken away. I was lucky to have had that love. I was so very lucky. Now, when I feel that pain of loss and it becomes too much, I remind myself to flood my thoughts with gratitude and love for what I had been given. And even though she is no longer physically on this earth, she is very much a part of me and influences my world and that of my children. As Tracy said, every person is here for a reason. They are here to teach us, impact us, and help us grow. We carry them in our hearts forever. When I take a step back to look at the impact my mother's life had and still to this day has on my life and on my loved ones around me, it is awe-inspiring. We owe it to ourselves to choose the mindset that inspires. And it is a choice. So with whatever you are dealing with right now, I ask you, have you chosen the mindset that makes you contract or the one that helps you expand? I loved Tracy's definition of success. Success for him is living life authentically. Within his business, within his marriage and friendships, if he can remain himself, then this is a life of success. And how true it is. We have all experienced people and places where we feel the need to be on, playing that part, expelling that energy, to act and be a certain way to please. Then you go to the people and places where you take off that mask, being authentically yourself, and you take that big breath of relief and you just be. How content do you feel in that moment of transition? Such sweet relief. So yes, living the entirety of your life in that feeling of easy authenticity, the freeness of being yourself with total acceptance, with total gratitude, is an amazing gift that you can give yourself in life. Are you living life authentically as yourself? Where are the places and who are the people who cause you to feel like you cannot really be yourself? What changes could you make to your life so that you would feel free to be you? Now, when I asked Tracy if he had any advice for someone who might feel stuck in life at the moment, I absolutely loved his answer. This ideate process he shared is something that I believe in deeply. This practice not only got me unstuck within my own life, but I know this is what has helped many, many other unstick their lives, as we have discussed it many times before on this podcast. I think that often in life, we can find ourselves surrounded by things that we don't want. All around us are have-tos. I have to do this. I have to do that. I need to do this. I need to do that. And when we get in that reactive mode with all of our have-tos, we tend to forget the want-tos. What I've learned is that it all begins with the wants. And a huge percentage of the population truly does not know what they want. When I was drowning in my life, buried underneath all the things that I did not want, I had a very clear realization that I didn't really know what it was that I did want. How many of you can identify with that feeling? Not fully knowing what you really want. I would bet a lot. A large percentage of the population never stops moving long enough to focus on even asking themselves that question, or they are so consumed with their needs that they think they do not have the luxury of wants. This is a mistake. Again, it all starts with the wants. And you must write it down. Write it all down. There is power in finding clarity and writing out your intentions. Getting clear on your goals and writing them down brings a special kind of magic, and the universe conspires to make it all happen with you. So take the time to do the practice that Tracy laid out. Even if you think you know what you want, if you have not done this exercise in the past year, it's time to do it again and make sure you are in touch with your own wants, staying true to your own course and not those of others. So take that time. Close your eyes. Think about your life 5 years in the future. Everything you have ever wanted worked out absolutely perfectly. What would your life look like? Where would you be living? What would your house look like? Who are the people who live there? I want you to know what everything looks like. What does it smell like? What does it feel like? What do you choose to do every day for work and for purpose? What do you choose to do for pleasure? How are you helping others? What kind of person are you? What do you exude to the world? As Tracy said, once you figure out what you want, once you know what you are looking for, it activates the reticular activating system in your brain, and you will start noticing where you can take those baby steps each and every day. You will see the doors start opening to help you get there. This is the way you transform your life. I hope you consider doing this practice and writing it down tonight. So this is my wish for us all, that you move forward on the path that is meant for you, and every day you absorb what is useful, discard the rest, and add something that is uniquely yours. Until next time. Thank you for joining us on Fresh Blood. Please subscribe and follow us on all streaming services, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Player FM. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Fresh Blood Podcast. I would love your help in spreading these stories and important messages. Please give us a like and share with a friend. Your help is greatly appreciated. I hope you make today a most fulfilling day.